Back to another tutorial in Maya. It's going to be interesting today because what we're going to learn about is displacement maps a little bit more in depth. And by this I mean sort of taking a real topological terrain and creating a real mesh out of it. And we do that in Photoshop, but for the moment I just want to show you kind of where I'm at. And this tutorial might get a little long because I don't know. Better get a cup of coffee, put it on pause, get a coffee, and come on back. All right, so pause. Okay. Now, as you can see here, basically this is just a mesh that I output from Photoshop and attached a color map to. And here's where we're at. It looks like ooh. Okay? It doesn't look good. And I show you this for a reason, because what you're seeing here is it's sort of artifacts that get created in the mesh as you're creating this stuff in Photoshop. So just be aware of this, that it'll start happening, you'll start getting some artifacts, and there's various ways to combat that. But at the moment, what we're interested in is just sort of getting a mesh out of Photoshop from a existing texture. And I think what I'll do is kind of show you what we can look for in a Photoshop file. For example, if we start with a crater, okay, this is just a crater, and it's a picture of a crater, high resolution. The higher quality, the better. But you'll notice that this image doesn't really tell the whole story, because yes, this is probably a high point, or in this case it's light coming across and illuminating whatever gets obscured, but that isn't necessarily how a displacement map would work. So we need to create a displacement map, but it won't work very well if we kind of use these values for creating our displacement map. So just something to be aware of, and we're going to take this image and put it in Photoshop. And might as well do that right now. Actually, let me show you what was happening in Photoshop before. In order to get that mesh that you were seeing on the original, this is sort of where I started from. And you can see where I have various files over here. I have the original image down there, and then the copy, desaturated. I made a bump map, a diffuse map, and I have some other stuff going on here. But essentially, this started in Photoshop as just a single image, like that crater that we saw. So we're going to build a little bit in Photoshop first before we get into Maya, and take a look at how this whole process works of creating a really great mesh and bringing that back into Maya. Okay, so this means that you can sort of take, topological terrain that's known. This is Mount Everest. I'm not sure exactly what part of Mount Everest it is, but anyway, it was just a basis for creating, some of this topological stuff. So anyway, there you go. I'm going to close out these. There was my displacement map as it came. So we're going to get to this point, but I'm going to show you why we get it that blurry. All right. So let's open up. Let's see. Let's open up just a crater image. Go to the internet, find yourself a nice NASA internet-based image like that, and let's get started. As you can see, we need to do some changes. First of all, this is a sepia tone, and we want to make a displacement map out of a black and a white photo. So first thing to do is just come in and duplicate your background layer, and that's cool. And what we'll do is just turn off the background, and with this background copy, come up and basically desaturate that image. Okay, so just hit desaturate. Now we kind of have like a black and white representation, but remember, black values mean the lowest point in a displacement map, and the white value is the highest. So in this case, this would indicate that this is going to be a high point, and then this is going to be a high point, and then this will be kind of low. But really what we want is a low point all around this crater. So we basically want everything around here to be black so that it builds up in the center. And let's see if I can show you the process real quick of what this is going to look like to start off with. First thing I want to do is take this background copy, make sure you're on your background copy, and let's come up into 3D and just see what that looks like. We're going to make a new mesh from this picture, and we'll go to plane, and it'll do some funny stuff here, and it'll create something that looks like that. Okay, well, we're pretty good to go. Let's just sort of move around. If you just click on there, you might want to hit K for your, if you don't get this indicator right here, hit K on your keyboard and you'll get it. So now we can see some values that are represented by that grayscale, but it doesn't look like a landscape at all. Okay, and it really looks like, you know, it kind of looks like it should, but not really. Okay, so let's play around. Before we do anything else, let's just take a look at this and say, well, we need a dome in the middle, but you can see where those values are. All right, well, let's zero this back out and give it an orientation of, like, say 0 and 0 and 0, and just sort of let it, you know, let's look down upon it. Okay, so really what we have to do here is make some adjustments. Don't worry that it looks real raggedy right now. Let's make the depth adjustments first. So over here, after we did that, you'll notice that you now have a background copy depth within all of this stuff. So go ahead and double click on your background, and you'll see where it shows up as a PSB file. You know, so that's just the way it is. So that's its file. But let's modify this layer a little bit, this copy. And to begin with, let's look at placing a black value all the way around here, and maybe placing more of a white value in here. So in order to do that, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You know, in some cases you might go to your burn tool and look that you're on your midtones, or in this case I might want to go to shadows and set my exposure about in the middle somewhere, and use your bracket keys, and you can upsize or downsize your brush. And I think what I'll do is just burn in the area all the way around here. So let's see what that burn brush is doing. Alright, it's not doing much to my highlights over here, so I might as well go over here and go back into, like, maybe midtones and see if it does anything. Well, it does. It's a little extreme, so let's just bring our exposure value up a little bit more, and I think I'll just bring that brush up. But you get the idea. You want to darken up some of these areas. In this case, we'll darken this. We'll just sort of burn it in where it should be low. There we go. And then we'll lighten up the areas that should sort of, you know, be more pronounced in height. All right. So now I have a nice ring. That'll turn out as a low value. And in this case, let's bring in here and go to our dodge tool now and bring that dodge up. I'm in the midtones, so that's cool. It'll dodge out a bit. So now you can see we're bringing out some whiter values in there. All right. So I might as well stay with that for the moment. And in this case, this area I may want to bring down a little bit as well. So I might go with a smaller brush size and just, oops, let's go do a undo. And we'll go into our burn tool. And burn tool, I'm in midtones 83. Looks okay to me. I'll just burn this in a little bit around here so it's not so extreme. All right. Okay, so now we kind of have a crater. It may look, I don't know, it may it may be right or not. You'll have to do a lot of experimenting with this method, but in this case, I think we're okay right here. So I'm going to click on I'm going to click on this one right here now, and maybe do a Command S, and that'll save the changes. I'm going to cancel that out because sometimes it'll automatically go and start making these changes. Sometimes you gotta hit save in order to save the changes. So now I'm going to hit K on the keyboard and go back into here, And you can see where those values are, kind of what we expected, but way too extreme in both the height and the depth. Okay, so let's make a couple changes to this real quick. Let's go back to our depth copy right here. That's our original, or just click on your tab for there. And in this case, we're going to add a filter, and we're going to come down to blur and do a Gaussian blur to this whole scene. So I'll go ahead and do that. And now 64.8 might seem a little extreme, and in this case it is. Let's start a little smaller than that and work our way up. I'll take it down to about a 6.4, and let's hit OK. And I'm going to click on this image over here. It should update. If not, hit go to File, Save, or just save your file. Okay. So now by blurring it a little bit, we have a lot more extreme values in our crater there, but it's still not quite what we want. It's pretty well defined, and we could smooth that out a little bit more by just adding a little bit more blur. So we'll go ahead and click on the background copy right here. Just make sure you get to there. And you might want to come up into the filter again, and we're going to go and do a blur, another blur. Filter, blur. Okay, let's just come and choose it from the menu to get our choices here. And you can see where we can kind of make out what's here, but really we want to blur that thing out really a lot. So, let's do an extreme on this, like 68.7. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and I'm going to click on my picture back here. You can see we're updating. All right, and now we have something that's more, akin to what I think we should be seeing. But you can see that the values are a little bit off right now, and that's cool because we can easily kind of fix that. So that's kind of the shape we want. And this is part of dealing with stuff in Photoshop and making a displacement map that you have to kind of be aware of. Let's bring this down a bit. You can grab in Photoshop, you can grab this little yellow y-axis scale tool and bring it down a little bit. And there we go. Okay, so it's looking like a pretty good crater. I mean, as far as a displacement map goes, it looks pretty good. Okay, so I guess let's just leave it like that for the moment. And I'm going to zero it back out up here in its orientation, just because I like to look at it, overall from the top view, and that kind of gives me an idea of, everything else that's going on. Okay, so now that I have that, I may want to go back into the background. Let's turn off our all of our displacement stuff there, and let's go to the background and take this background, and let's just do a duplicate. You can go to layer, duplicate layer, and let's do a copy, and let's turn our background off just so we have everything kind of straight. And on this background copy, let's label this one maybe color. Okay, so I'm just going to put color map, and there it is. And let's just duplicate this layer again, and let's make this one say like the bump map. Okay, and let's just stay with that for the moment. Okay, because that's really all we need. Because what we want to do is bring this overall image or this mesh into Maya and assign this exact same texture to it, sort of, to start out. So that's the process that we're going for right now. All right, let's bring the this bump map first of all down to let's just make it what a bump map kind of should look like. Go to your adjustments, do a brightness. Let's bring the brightness up a little bit, and I don't know, you want to desaturate this image, so essentially make sure you desaturate. And in this case it's really light, and we may want to make those same changes of burning in, or somehow painting over this edge, because we don't want this in the bump map to be a positive value, we want it to be a negative value. So remember, you're always thinking in reverse when you're doing this stuff, and keep that in mind. I think I'll just do my exposure up to 100%. So anyway, I'm going to come in here and just fill this in. And I'm doing this because this should be a low value in a bump map. It should match more black like that. So we don't want it affecting it too much. So let's see, we burn the highlights. Let's see if we can do midtones too. Yeah, we can do midtones. Okay, so I'm just kind of doing some burning there for the bump map. Because really the bump map is just for this textural stuff on the outside. All right. So I think I can stay with that for the moment. And in this case, because it is a bump map, I'm going to come up here into the adjustments and actually, let's look at its levels first. Levels look pretty good. I could shift it a little bit more, over into this realm right there. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to bring this image, I'm going to bring the brightness up a bit more. Because with a bump map, the brighter the better. And I think that looks pretty good. And what I'll do is just apply an overall, we'll just do an overall dodge. And we'll do that here. So you can see where there's quite a bit of work when you start getting into doing all your other maps and stuff like that. Anyway, the point is not to teach you about doing maps right now, because there are tutorials on that. Just be aware that you can use the same, Photoshop file to create all of your stuff, your color map, bump, diffuse, specular, whatever. So there it is. All right, and I think I might even do that a little more. The lighter the better on bump maps sometimes. And in this case, we're not really going to see the results of this because I'm not going to fine-tune the render, but you get the idea. All right, so let's do a save on that one, and let's output. Let's do some output. I think I'll just do this and send it to the desktop. That's fine. All right. So I'm going to save that. Oh, first, let's look at our background copy over here. Yep. If I turn it on, maybe that'll help. Okay, so here we go. We're almost done. If you stick with me, you're going to see this looks really cool in Maya. All right, so basically I'm done. Hit K on the keyboard, bring up the rotation tools, and that looks pretty cool. And we'll attach this color map to it. So I'll go ahead and zero that out again. And what we're going to do is we're going to export this right now. All right. I'm going to zero it out just basically because when it imports to Maya, it sort of, gives it to you in a straight up, straight down kind of format. Okay. So there we go. Now, we're not quite ready to export this yet. We want to make sure that you have everything is locked down, meaning that you're not going to change the size or scaling or anything of this. So make sure you're kind of aware of that, and just be aware, because once we send this out, it's going to create two files. All right, and we'll do that right now. So what we want to do is go to 3D, come down and export as a 3D layer. And when we do that, I'm going to navigate to the, let's see, I'm going to go to the Everest folder. Actually, we may even put a new folder within this and just call this the creator. All right, and so I'm going to save it as a mesh. And you want to look at what your format is. Usually an OBJ, you can't go wrong with an OBJ. So in this case, that's what I'm going to use. So you can experiment with others, but that's what I'm going to use right now. Okay? So now it should have, or is right now, saving this file out into that folder. So I'm going to go to Photoshop and just hide for a second. And let's go into the Everest folder, make sure that, let's see, creator, see there's our two files. I sent it to that, to the right there. All right, so it makes a .mtl file and a .obj. And this is the file that we're most interested in right now, okay? So just so you're aware. Now let's go back into Maya. And in this case, I'm going to go to File and just do I'll just do a new scene. And yeah, I'll save those. Okay, so now we have just a basic new scene. And let's get to that mesh right away. So come on up to File and let's import that mesh. I'm going to go to Import. And in this case, it's on my desktop underneath that Everest folder. And there it is. It's in the crater. And you'll notice that sometimes you're, like I'm on a Mac, I don't know on a PC, but these will get disabled. Just come down into your file type, and we want to make sure that it's set to OBJ, because I want to open up an OBJ. And in this folder, there's only one file that's a .obj. And it enabled that because now it's not grayed out. So I can choose that. Okay, now hopefully if all goes well, it will show up in our scene, and there it is. But it's really small. You know, sometimes that's what happens when you come with stuff out of Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and give it some scale, and it looks really dense. I mean, you can see where, you know, we got a pretty dense mesh there. So that's cool. I'll go ahead and just sort of, let's go into shaded mode. See if we can see that thing. Now, sometimes it'll look really ugly like this. Not to worry. Or, you know, really start worrying. Right now I'm in high quality rendering. I think what I'll do is just sort of get off high quality. And, yeah, for the moment we won't worry about it. We'll just see what it looks like. So this sort of comes in with its own default material. And what I'm going to do is, I think I can just rotate this. You might want to go up into your go up into here, and we'll rotate that like yeah, you know, -90, I guess. Let's just do an exact -90. All right. I think I want to modify my center pivot too, so I'll just drop that up there. And come on down. Bring it kind of down on the plane, and let's do a quick render just to see kind of what this mesh looks like by default. And I think that I'm in well, I was in Mental Ray, but this is from the old scene, and there we go. Really ugly. Okay, so that's like super ugly. All right, well, let's see. Why does it do that? Well, you know, it does because it's a mesh, and it's being output from Photoshop. And if I can just sort of get off of there. And, you know, essentially it's picking up a lot of characteristics of what's actually in the image. And it's sort of like, because I adjusted these values, it just sort of wants to, you know, make it look like this. However, if you experiment with 16-bit meshes, that will solve a lot of these problems that you get with the 8-bit. And this is an 8-bit mesh. And so sometimes when you're working with stuff, you want to go with the 16-bit option. And that's kind of a tutorial for another day, but let's get on with this and sort of just work with this as it shows up. You know, it just looks like it does. Well, that's all great, but let's assign our color map to that real quick. Let's create a Lambert, and if you just click on your Lambert, let's go and assign that let's go to the color and assign it a file, like a 2D file, and let's make that file whatever we found in that Everest. So really we want to, we haven't output a color map yet, so we need to output a color map. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel for the moment. And we're going to go back into Photoshop. And you can see where this is kind of a process. And it can get tricky. So I'm going to turn off both my meshes there. And here's my color map. And I want to assign this texture, this color, directly to that mesh. So let's do this. Let's take this right here and output that as, say, like a TIFF or something. I'm just going to come to Save As. And I want to, you know, direct it to that same folder, and you might as well. And let's save that as a, say, like a TIFF file, and with no layers. We don't want the layers in there. And good. So we'll just save it as a TIFF into there. And now I can get out of Photoshop, come right back into Maya, and we can assign, I'm going to bring the hypershade over here. We can assign that file right there. If all goes well, let's go into, let's see here, desktop and Everest and creator. There we go. Okay, so here's our TIFF, and that's what we're going to assign to that. And now we have a material, Lambert 2, that has that picture set to it. And if I click on my plane down here, right mouse click, come down, assign existing material, and then we'll just go to that Lambert 2. And let's do a quick render. I can turn my textures on from here to kind of see what it's doing, but let's look at the render view real quick and let's see what it's doing there. All right, I'm gonna come up here a little bit closer and we'll get another view on it. And there we go. All right, now you can see where it really does look like it should, except for all that stair stepping and all those artifacts. Okay, and this method is the 8-bit method, and you can do this with a 16-bit method, and we're going to go through that one. I think what I'll do is do a continuation of this tutorial, and we'll see if we can't work with this in a 16-bit mode. It may be kind of difficult because, if the image itself isn't a 16-bit image, then, it's not going to work very well, in the 16-bit mode. So we'll see if there's something we can't do for that as a continuation of this. But anyway, you get the idea. You can attach an image. We could also get rid of this mesh and maybe play around with it a little bit more if there's too much stepping involved. So I think that's probably the coolest thing to do. Maybe I can get it done in a couple of minutes. So let's do this. I'm gonna come down here and just get rid of that, and I'm gonna hide Maya. I'm gonna come back into Photoshop. Where's my Photoshop? And here's the image here, but I want to actually work with my depth map. This background copy right there. Okay. And that stair stepping in there is it's a problem. So let's maybe make this even blurrier and add more Gaussian blur to this and see what happens. So if you come up into your filter, we'll come back down and add just a little bit more blur. Oop. You actually want to get to your filter, go to blur, and actually choose Gaussian blur and bring that up quite a bit. Let's try like at 112, whatever. You're just going to increase the blurriness. I'm going to go ahead and click on my copy there, and let's actually turn that layer on. All right, and you'll notice that your other layers show up in the background. Sometimes it's just that you have to turn off their visibility over here. So anyway, it's sort of a matter of working with the mesh in here and adding more blur to it. And I can see right here where all that aliasing is going on. So you may want to figure out ways that you can smooth this, and just sort of play around with that method. So anyway, I don't think I'm going to try and export this as a mesh because we're pretty much going to get the same thing. I may want to play with the Y value a little bit. Look at that. Yeah, so you can create just about anything you want, in Photoshop on a mesh. And get that out of there and put it in Maya, and now you have some actual real topology. Okay, so wow, all right, this has been way too long, but I think you get the idea. That's how it works. So go forth, make yourself some displacement planes from real topological maps and stuff, and stop back for another tutorial. And as always, read a book because you want to get smart. It's good for your brain, and be a good person, because we all need to be really good people all the time, not just every day, every minute. All right, take care. Thanks for watching.